What are we going to do about wages
Good.
in America?
Good. An excellent and important question. Because right now, we have tens of millions of people who are earning what I consider to be starvation wages. Can you imagine somebody today earning $9 an hour?
It don't make no sense.
No, it doesn't. How do you pay your rent? How do you pay for food? How do you pay for transportation?
Right.
You can't. And if you have a child.
Yes. And my thing is that, you know, certain people like to brag that there is more jobs now in America, but it's like, yeah, there's an increase of jobs given, but what are they paying in these jobs? They're practically paying nothing.
You got it. That is exactly the issue. So you can get a job, but maybe you're going to have to work for 2 or 3 jobs.
Exactly.
Legislation that I've introduced, which was passed in the House recently, U.S. House, would raise that minimum wage to $15 an hour. And what we also have to do is make it easier for workers to join unions so they can sit down and engage in collective bargaining and earn a decent living.
So in that, I think it was like 50-second video, there was a more serious consideration of a number of related issues than you'll see probably all day on MSNBC, unfortunately. Some people are doing very well, some not so much. Let's talk about both groups. So there's nearly 500 million people around the world struggling to find adequate paid work, trapping individuals in a poverty and fueling heightened levels of inequality. This is according to a new UN report. 500 million people that might be able to find some work, but not enough to necessarily sustain their lives, let alone prosper. Out of a working age population of 5.7 billion people around the world, this report found that as many as 165 million people were employed but unable to find work with an adequate amount of paid hours to meet their needs. It also found a further 119 million had either given up actively searching for work or lacked access to the job markets because of their personal situations. Alongside those officially classified as unemployed, there's about 473 million people across the planet being affected in a similar way. These are huge numbers, a lot of them outside of the United States, but they're out there and they are struggling at the same time that some people are doing quite well. A new report found that the world's 2,153 billionaires have more wealth than 4.6 billion people. And that number is interesting, not just who they have more wealth than, but the absolute number of billionaires, that has been changing a lot too. This new report shows that the number of billionaires has doubled in the past decade. So that puts us right back to around the initial recovery from the Great Recession. A lot had been done, these banks had been shored up inside of the United States and many other countries. And then largely things went back to normal in terms of the political status quo. But the recovery was never equitable. It never affected all groups evenly. Many people's wages have not gotten back up to where they need to be. They're not keeping pace with inflation. Many people's savings were absolutely wiped out. But at the same time, billionaires have not only recovered, they've in fact doubled in time since then. To put it in a world perspective, the 22 richest men in the world have more money than all of the women in Africa. That entire region of the world, you can take a tiny handful of men, they could fit comfortably in this room for some sort of cocktail gathering, and more money than all the women in Africa. So we are seeing huge gains for a very small number of people, literally just a couple of thousand people, and billions of people struggling, increasingly so. Many unable to find any work, hundreds and hundreds of millions more able to find some work, but not enough to live an actual life of dignity and freedom. What you have there is, what does income inequality have to do with life expectancy? And it's actually gigantic. If you are one of the poorest Americans versus one of not even like the top 1%, we're talking about people that make $250,000. That's a lot of people. That's, well, a quartile, I guess. You're talking about a difference a few years back of something like 10 years difference in how long on average you will live. That is larger than the difference between men and women. Obviously there's racial differences as well, but this income difference is, I believe, possibly the largest, and it's tied in with a lot of other things. If you don't have much money, you're not gonna get healthcare that you need, you're gonna eat food that's not gonna sustain your body as much. But 10 years, that is a huge difference in the overall life satisfaction and length. The numbers are so crazy when it comes to our economy that should be all it takes to get people to talk about these issues. The gap between rich and poor can't be resolved without deliberate inequality busting policies, and too few governments are committed to these. Our broken economies are lining the pockets of billionaires and big business at the expense of ordinary men and women. No wonder people are starting to question whether billionaires should even exist. And that's at a time when they're becoming increasingly common. Some people are benefiting, but until the government stops just taking their marching orders from these people, organizing things in a way that more and more of that money is gonna flow to the very top, we are not gonna fix this inequality. The system is not designed to do so. So the system itself needs to be changed. That's the only solution. That is the history of Bernie Sanders. He is the guy who is unexpectedly accurate on the most important issues facing the American people. It would be great every once in a while if people paid attention to him when he's actually saying it, and not just wait until the great weight, the inertia of American politics and political discourse finally catches up to him. Years after, when people like Donald Trump are in power, maybe once pay attention when he's pushing his message in the first place. And hopefully now is the time. Hopefully with the power of Bernie Sanders combined with Cardi B, people will pay attention.